Okay, so we're going to talk this week about some of the navigation apps and what different screens are available and the technology we have available with the different stuff. Kempton, help us out.
Great. So thanks, Dan. So originally, my thought was to talk about Copilot, but then Nico from Minden and others chimed in about, the because I didn't know most of these other. Can everyone? I just have one slide. Okay, so it's a little busy. Can everyone see the slide?
Yes.
Okay. So on the left is a screenshot from today when I was flying out of Lompoc, where's my cursor? Can I get a cursor on this? Oh, come on. I can't do cursor in display
There you
mode.
go.
Right, but I had to get out of this. So I haven't been, since I'm not in doing much sales work anymore, I'm getting rusty on my presentation skills. Okay, so over here is a screenshot of from today when I was in my ship south. Where is this? This is like east of San Luis Obispo. For those of you who don't know the area, Lompoc is right about here. And you can see this fog coming in, and Santa Maria is right about here, and it too is having fog coming in. I wound up landing at Santa Ynez because it was just getting a little iffy to try to get into Lompoc. But the key point here is I had been using Copilot since about the early summer, principally to get the satellite pictures. Because what it does, what I had been doing before was going out in a browser and then pulling, going to my site for satellite pictures and pulling that. Well, that means that you have to have a connection when you go to get it. The better situation would be is if it would always be getting on its own the latest satellite picture for where you're at, so that when you do want to find out what's going on, that you can just pull it up and satellite pictures have anywhere from like a 30-minute to 40-minute delay on what they show, but it's close enough to give you a feel for what's going on. So I think I was talking to Gordon, or no, Rami told me one aspect, but then Gordon had been sending me pictures on my Las Cruces flight, and so that's what got me going in this. And like everybody else, I don't want to learn a new app, but having um, pull satellite images was worth it for me. And Copilot's not a big it's not a big deal to install. You just go to the WeGlide site, install it, and then it runs. You have to be within cell coverage. Okay, obviously it helps when you're lower, but it hits it enough that it shows up and it's showing you relatively recent satellite pictures. So that was the only reason I got it. And then Rami was the one who said he and I had a south wind wave flight from Lompoc back up to Williams, and I was ahead of him, and we got into the wave behind San Benito, which is the peak north of Coalinga. And he was probably 40 minutes behind me. And I was trying to describe where I was at and all for him to get to. And he said, "Oh, don't worry, I've got Copilot and I can see your tracer where you're at." Well, that's really cool. So you don't have to be near the person, and it would show that. And then I had an email exchange with Nico Bennett from Minden, and he was pointing out how, well, Copilot uses OGN, but it doesn't necessarily include ADS-B also. And so PureTrack so apparently the pilots at Minden have standardized on PureTrack, which you can also run on your phone, and it can then show the ADS-B targets, like we all do when we're not flying, see it on our computers, ADS-B, InReach, and FLARM. And so you could have that, and it also apparently has a satellite image capability, which apparently is a bit hit or miss. Nico has seen it before. I have not used, I'm just going off of what his comments were in our exchange. So at the end of the day, to me, it's what are you looking for? I mean, obviously we'd all like to have an all-in-one. And Dan was the one, our Dan Colton on the call, was the one saying, well, on Navigator, which is what he used and what I use, SeeYou Navigator on the phone, you can also include the satellite picture. Well, that's this switch here on the layers control. But I did that on my last flight and it wasn't it wasn't bringing it up. So I don't know how it toggles or something. So maybe you could fill in for that, Dan. So I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention because I think it's good. The bottom line is, and I'd like to open it up for everyone's comments. But basically, I mean, I just got Copilot just for the satellite pictures. I have, we have ADS-B and FLARM in the cockpit on the LX, but I don't really use the LX much. And supposedly that shows up on Navigator too, but I actually haven't been seeing that on my Navigator. And you have to have a cell connection, I think, to have that work. So basically, we're still in this flux of all these applications showing different stuff for what's indicated. Uh, yeah, so I'll pause right there. Dan, if you want to make any comments, then we'll
Yeah,
open it up.
let me share a couple of screenshots
Yep,
that
I'll
I've
stop
got.
sharing.
All right, am I sharing?
Yes.
Okay. So this is SeeYou Navigator with the this, let's just call it satellite, but it's not really satellite. It's more like radar. You know, we're seeing the density of the water. We're seeing where it's raining and where there's moisture in the air. So it's not really looking down at the clouds like it is a satellite. And then I've also got, let's see.
But do you recall what I mean? Because like I showed you on my screen, I toggled the satellite, but I didn't get anything on on my Navigator display.
Right. So this was just me playing around with this at home. So I don't think I can do these side by side. No. So I'll go back and forth between the two pictures. So this is Copilot, and Copilot, I don't know how you get the other, targets. So Kempton, are you saying with Copilot you can also get ADS-B and FLARM from OGN?
Correct. That's there's a button for that. It showed the two little airplane icons.
Yeah. So
But
you can see that you're getting I'm getting a similar radar feedback with the yellow where it's raining and the blue where it's heavy moisture, but I've also got the white for the clouds. And I'm not seeing that on SeeYou Navigator, which would be, for me it would be better, but maybe I just am not hitting that right that right layer that's showing me clouds.
right. So
But but
at
it,
this
it
point, yeah.
validates that the display is very similar. Where we're seeing the rain is the same in both applications at the same time. So it is pulling the data down, but I would like to figure out, which layer to put on so I can see the visible clouds for when I'm turning back, so I can know how much shade is on the ground, stuff like that.
Right, exactly, or what's behind a thunderstorm or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm curious just to open this up now to the everyone on the call. So like I said, I'm just a new Copilot user just within this year, and I didn't know if there were others, who are using the Pure Track to be able to share their experiences on this, or even on Navigator, because so basically this is your typical software problem, right? We've got all these hodgepodge of applications when we don't like it in one. But I mean, I don't mind flipping back and forth to Copilot, again, just for the satellite, because that's a very high value to me.
And it's, on a long flight, it's not something that I'm going to be doing a lot. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Andre and I are talking to each other, do you think our path back is going to be blocked? What's going on 75 to 100 miles behind us?
Right.
So I can speak more about Copilot that I've been using since the beginning of this year, or maybe the end of last year. So other than the satellite, which is what we're kind of comparing between the various tools, it has two more very useful functions. So it's really three things, three functionality in one app, which is why I like to use it a lot. It's on my phone, so I don't all the time look at it. My phone usually by default this is on XSOAR, So I just occasionally switch over to Copilot. So one is what we talked about, is to see the satellite photo, which is very helpful. And it's, as Kempton said, it gets refreshed pretty often. Sometimes it can be like 20 minutes or so of no updates if there's no signal, but I don't think I've seen more than like 20 minutes. And it's updated also in, I think, in chunk on jumps of every 20 minutes also. So you're never going to see exactly the real time, but it's pretty close. And you also, it's also do a play, so you can actually see the movement of the clouds. But the other functionality that we briefly mentioned, it's not showing in those screenshots, since I guess nobody else flew, is really we're showing where everyone else is. So that's the blue icon with the two plane. When it's blue, means it's been clicked on. It will show you all the traffic which is registered on OGN. So so indeed, if someone is not registered on OGN and they have ADSB, it's actually, I believe they're not going to show up. So really good for all of us by now. OGN is out for so long. There's really no excuse for anyone not to be registered on OGN. So if you register on OGN, you'll show up. I think, I don't know if it will show up like your tracker, but it will show up the FLAM and your ADSB. So I kind of see most of the in the areas I fly, I see most of the gliders actually showing up pretty nice, and they can be any distance. There is no any limit on range here because it's not relatively to where you are. You can zoom in and out and see what everybody's doing at Minden and Williams, and zoom in and see where your bodies are. And also this, I noticed that this gets actually refreshed more often than the satellite. And that's because it's doesn't require much data to show a position of aircraft. It's very little data. So you get one short burst of data of connection, and it's going to update right away. So I typically see as within 10 to 15 minutes where everybody is, which is pretty close to where they are. So that's the second functionality. And the third one, which is also useful on some days, and the day that Kempton mentioned when I was following behind on the wave, it was very helpful. You can also turn on a layer which will show you it will paint an area of based on, if it's only one glider, it's only based on one glider. But if there are many gliders flying, like some days we have in the summer, it will basically show you the hotspots. It will, I usually choose the layer of vertical climb, so I can easily see which areas have the strongest lift. You can do instead altitude, but I think it's a little less useful, altitude, than actually how strong the conditions are. So based on the color, you can see it's paint on your screen, various lines that will correlate to the lift. So on that wave day, I could actually see which area Kempton was actually climbing, not just gliding downwind, but actually climbing in wave. And that was pretty helpful. I could see that the wave is behind the San Benito's there because the color was telling me that. So that's very helpful. It's you can see days with convergence. It would show where's the strongest convergence. So it's a bit like cheating. If you have the more gliders you have ahead of you, the more accurate picture you get versus just based on one aircraft. So yeah, those three functions are all available just based on whatever you toggle on those buttons there on the Copilot app. I did not try the Pure Track one. I may try it sometime, but I don't recall that Pure Track has any more than location and satellite. I don't think it's actually showing traces. Oh, and by the way, you also see, in addition to the colors I mentioned, you also see the trace, but that's only partial traces, usually whenever there was connection. But you can actually see some of the traces of the fox that you're following your bodies. And so yeah, I'm not sure that Pure Track have all this functionality, but I'll give it a try. but Copilot is really nice.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me about Pure Track is that, just like we all see if you're sitting at your home and just watching everybody else fly on your computer, is that of course, it's whatever geography, including the entire world. And so, to have that in the cockpit, then, basically you're not limited by the range of the live receiver in the cockpit, like an LX display, for example, right? It's having to actually, that antenna actually has to receive that to be able to display that. So then by just having it on your phone, so long as you get a cell connection, then it can show that. So to me, it's like there is no universal solution here, because ideally the universal solution would have stuff coming into it, receiving on its own antenna, like the LX, and you could paint on top of that, all of this other data of anybody else, within 500 miles, of that. So that doesn't exist. It may not exist. But I think what I'm coming to the conclusion here is that if you wanted to see what everyone's doing at long range being beyond what your in cockpit receiver is receiving, then that's really what Pure Track and any of the other trackers would be about, so long as they get a cell signal, right? So obviously, if you're much higher up or in areas, generally it seems like 3 to 5,000 feet, you're probably going to get a signal, but once you get above 5,000 feet, it becomes less so. That's kind of this discussion to me is that's what it's about. If you need to get something longer range, I like the feature, what you mentioned, Rami. I didn't know that layers would then, basically leave residual contrails, if it were, so that, long meaning more than 10, 15 minutes, then you could see, where people were. So, and I'd like to hear other people's comments or usage on that. Does anyone
Yeah. So
okay.
this is Andre. I just want to make sure that we're not misunderstanding the middle picture, the screenshot of SeeYou Navigator. So what you have there enabled as satellite, that's not a live satellite image. That's just a static satellite map that does not update. So you can choose
Ah,
different views, like different base maps, including none, nothing, or you can go all the way to satellite, which is a static image. If you go down below to layers, and you don't have the screenshot probably, but everybody who has a SeeYou Navigator right now, you can open up your app, and when you go down to the bottom to the
oh,
layers,
further down.
especially
Okay.
even further down, you have to log into SkySight. So SeeYou has a SkySight integration, and there's a satellite switch. So if you enable the
Oh,
satellite
okay.
switch, the SkySight, then you will start getting exactly the same view that you're seeing here on the Copilot.
Okay, so maps and layers, configure
And
map
even more
layers.
than that, it will have rain radar. You can choose a lot of cool stuff
Oh,
from
I
from
see that. Yeah, further down on this, because this is only a partial. I see satellite there under SkySight. Okay.
right? And then you have rain radar right above that.
Right, in the rate. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna do the hack piece here. I don't know if you can see that. Uh,
Yes, we
yeah.
can see it.
So you can see that I've clicked on the under SkySight satellite, and then right above that rain. Where does that come from? Rain Viewer. I don't know what that is. I guess it must be some other app that Navigator is plugged into. So
Right.
okay,
Yeah, and then
I'll have
it
to give
gives
that a
you
try.
basically the same view as you would see on the here on the Copilot.
Okay. No, this is great. I like it when I can learn more stuff. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the base map satellite. Okay. I actually don't like too much, personally, I don't like too much stuff, in terms of the terrain, because it gets distracting. So, all right, that's good to
Yeah,
have.
I usually have it set to light. So
Okay.
I have some features that I can recognize,
Hmm.
and then you can see the radar, the satellite on top of it much easier.
Okay. Well, and as Dan and I were exchanging earlier, I mean, obviously, we'd all like to have everything in one app. So, I mean, for me, having the Copilot up is not a huge thing, but and Rami's comment on the layer to be able to show that. Now I'm going to have to. So, basically, what this is telling me is like it gives me more reason to have both apps open. Get the satellite on my Navigator, but then I'll have to use the layering to show where everyone's been, so we can go to their lift location of 2 hours ago. Thanks, Andre. That was very helpful. Other comments, and you too, Rami. Other comments or questions on this?
Other users?
I warmed it up for you. It's the best seat in the house. Second best.
Sorry, Nat, was that a question? I guess background noise. Well, let me ask this: I don't know if there's the survey function on this, but is anyone not using Copilot or the satellite function on PureTrack? I mean, this was fairly new to me, so I assume that a decent number of people also weren't using it or didn't want to try it. Is uh, is most everyone using this, or I have no idea.
Well, I'll chime in first, Kempton. It's so new to me that I was only first using it towards the end of summer up at Truckee to sort of validate when is it time to launch. We can see the first cue popping when they're high enough if we're looking over the ridge, over North Star. But with the satellite picture that might be 15 minutes, 20 minutes old, we can see um, the whole range to the east of Minden and even further
I know.
south. So where are the things starting to pop, and is it time to go? It was just we were using that to calibrate the forecast and validate. Yep, well we were saying we should launch at noon because it'll be working then, and yep, go. And now Andre is starting to encourage me to start using it in flight for live decisions.
Yeah, and that's what I use it for. But I was, curious if anyone else can share their experience with it, or if you're not using it, that's fine too. That's to me is the purpose of these kind of calls is to go, give it a try. Other users of it so far?
Yeah, I'm just the middleman, so I got introduced to that by Rami, and then I'm spreading the word because I also started using it during the summer, especially the Copilot app. The reason I like the Copilot app more is because the targets of other gliders are much easier to see.
Mm,
I have my UDI Navigator, tethered to my phone over Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and get sporadic updates that way. But the targets, like other gliders, are so tiny, it's so hard to see them. And usually, as far as I can tell, the data comes from my farm, because I'm also connected with my UDI to my LX100. And LX100 is getting data from the farm unit and ADS-B. But the targets are so tiny, in the cockpit, it's so, I'm like, I already wrote a request, and maybe if more people write to the SeeYou people, to have them make gliders bigger on the map, because they're really the size of the airports, the little dots, and they're hard to spot. And I'm like, when
okay.
I'm, when I'm flying and navigating and everything else, I cannot be putting on a magnifying glass and starting to look for other gliders. So I asked them to maybe make the icons larger or have an option, like you can tweak it in the settings to make the gliders more visible, other planes. But they said no, they're not planning to do anything about it. At least
Yeah,
that was the last response I got from them.
yeah, like on the Mac, you can change the size of the cursor, which I really like.
Right, right,
Especially when you
right.
have a very busy screen. People say, "Well, it's just because you're getting old and you need the bigger fonts." I go, "I don't use bigger fonts. I just want to find something in my, I got all this stuff up, so I make my cursor arrow really big, so it's really, easy to find." And I agree with you. If you look at, for those of you who use ForeFlight, which is probably not many of you, I use it because it tells me runway width, and it can get you AWOS information from places that are outside of radio transmission. Um, it uses a big icon for yourself and other traffic.
Yeah, but number one reason why I use it is for decision making, long range decision making, where I start seeing overdevelopment,
Yep.
where I'm choosing whether to continue on the Sierras or transition over to the whites or vice versa. Those are the things that are, kind of priceless to me at this point.
Yep. No, I absolutely agree with that. Okay. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour, so any other questions or whatnot? I mean, I hope at minimum this interests you so that you can at least, if you haven't been using them, you could use Copilot and or I learned about the satellite layer on Navigator, and to be able to take a look at PureTrack for showing ADSB included targets. I mean, what this is really saying is that if we could just get internet into the cockpit in a cheap manner, like, when Starlink satellites start broadcasting that and bathing us in all of this more irradiation, then we'll be good. Any other closing comments or questions?
I guess not. I think we got it.
Okay.